In Titus 2, older women are commanded to teach what is good so they can help younger women love their husbands and children. On today's show, you'll hear from older women who will share timeless, relevant biblical wisdom and personal, profound life experiences to help answer your questions and teach what God says is good so you can be the wife and mother you were created to be. Welcome to another episode of Older Women Likewise.
Welcome, sisters in Christ, to Older Women Likewise, and our conversation tonight about overcoming food addiction. So, as my guest, Janice McDonald, put it to me recently in an email, she said, "Tonight is not about obesity or thinness. This is not about size or weight or my worth as a woman based on appearance. This is about overcoming whatever it is that has you and I stuck in the cycle of a continual lust for more, as described in Ephesians 4:19. So for those Christian women out there who are trying to decide whether they even want to watch this or not, I get that. So first off, I want to say that we realize that we're really taking a big chance tonight. There are landmines all over this topic, and we get that. And we just consciously decided that we'd be willing to be disliked by some by talking about this so that we can improve the quality of the lives of those around us in all kinds of ways, spiritually and physically. I mean, even physically, I learned just recently that diabetes alone kills more people. It causes more deaths than AIDS and breast cancer combined. So that's one of the many things that our conversation, I think, can help people with. And we want to assure you too that we reviewed and have taken into consideration many, many verses that address this topic around food. And I mean, everything from fasting to gluttony. We've read all the Bible verses, so we're determined not to bind anything tonight that God has not bound. And we're also determined to tread very, very mindfully around this topic because I know we're all pretty sensitive about it. And so take what you like, leave the rest. That's what we should be doing always anyway. And I would encourage our listeners to Google in an electronic concordance and read for yourselves what God says. And because the same God that said that everything created by God is good and nothing is to be rejected if it's received with thanksgiving, 1 Timothy 4:4, also addresses the sin of gluttony like 100 times. According to that Open Bible website, the Topical Bible, said 100 times. So I think you'll agree this is very much a Bible topic and therefore quite worthy of consideration. So know this, and this is a point that I really want you to understand. We're not going to say tonight that eating sugar or white flour is a sin, but we will be talking about one approach to not being addicted to those substances that has worked for my friend Janice. And so let me introduce her to you now. This is my friend Janice. So our mothers were besties. In fact, Janice's mother was present the night that my mother breathed her last in my home that I grew up in. And many of the things that drew our mothers together also draw us together. We're both in love with God. We have this burning desire to continue to grow spiritually. We're all just so super curious about all kinds of things. And we just love being genuine and vulnerable and having heart-to-heart conversations. So I have jokingly referred to Janice in the podcast that we did together on Nomads, You and I, that she's my shrink because she baptizes you in compassion while she tells you the hard things you need to hear. And that honestly just brings out the best in me and I think a lot of other people. Janice McDonald, welcome.
Thank you so much, Cindy. I really appreciate it. It truly is an honor to be here with you tonight. And I hope that by me sharing my story, that someone watching, whether it's live tonight or whether it's down the road, someone watching will be able to muster up the courage to try again, to overcome whatever it is that has them trapped in that continual lust for more cycle And yeah. And that's the hardest part. The hardest part is knowing that you're stuck and
Yeah.
you need to make a change. You want to make a change and it feels just too hard. Or you're afraid because you're fearing that you're going to fail again.
Yeah.
Paul described it.
You're an inspiration around that, Janice, and I've seen you do it in so many lives. So I'm really anxious today. So you're going to say Paul describes this well?
Yeah, Paul described it really well in Romans 7, starting in verse 21 through 24. So I find this law at work. When I want to do good, evil is right there with me. For in my inner being, I delight in God's law, but I see another law at work in the members of my body, waging war against the law of my mind and making me a prisoner of the law of sin at work within my members. What a wretched man that I am. Who will rescue me from this body of death? And that pain of knowing that a change needs to happen, but failing to follow through with the action, that pain is intense. And in Paul's own words, it wages war in our soul.
Yes, it wages war with the soul. So we all have a lifelong relationship with food, don't we, Janice? Everyone has a lifelong relationship with food. I mean, and Janice and I even have, as much as we have in common, we both have a very different relationship with food. Like, I got a letter from my doctor once when I was training for a half marathon that said I was pre-diabetic. And the letter was like, oh, you might want to think about getting a little exercise, and getting off of sugar and some high carbs, and flour. So, and that's really been a struggle with me ever since. And so that's something that I often will turn to you when I am struggling. And that's kind of how it ended up that we wanted to invite you on the program, is that you've helped me so much in this because you have a certain technique that you have found very, very effective. So will you tell us a little bit about your story, Janice?
Yeah, I will. And as I share my story with you, it is so important that you hear the pain of what had me waging war in my mind. And I say that because my desire to overcome, the reason I wanted to overcome has changed through the years. And it would be so easy for the nature of my battle to be seen purely as physical. And especially as women, there is such great pressure on us when it comes to size and to weight and to appearance. And my story has elements of all of that. In fact, as I was preparing for this, I had a recollection of a time when I was in my early 20s and I was at the doctor's office and I was on one of the restricted things that I was doing, 500 calorie a day thing. And my blood sugar dropped while I was there.
Oh,
And
wow.
the nurse came to me and she brought a little individual wrapped snack item thing for me to eat. And I was like, I can't eat that. It's not on my plan,
Oh, wow.
whatever plan it was at that time. And she's like, why are you so worried about that? You're healthy. And my response was, I don't care about being healthy. I want to be skinny. Like it really got to the point where I was willing to sacrifice my health in the pursuit of thinness because so it's important to me that as I share my story, no, I've struggled with all of that, but that's not the reason for me sharing the story. It really is about overcoming. And I am fully convinced that in my youth, the choices I made, I dieted myself into obesity. And while that was a very painful journey, I sit here today so grateful for all of the lessons I learned along the way. I just am so grateful. I even have the word grateful behind me because it just is where I am. It was a painful journey, but it was the journey I needed to take to learn those lessons. So,
yeah.
As I share my story, I'd like you to maybe consider 1 Peter 2, verse 11, that says, Beloved, I urge you as aliens and strangers to abstain from fleshly lusts, which wage war against the soul. Because, the choice I made to give up flour and sugar, it is being an alien and a stranger because people are like, what do you eat?
What planet are you from, Janice?
Right. How do you even celebrate anything? So Oh, my relationship with food really got skewed at a very young age, probably around the age of 10, 9 or 10. It was at the very beginning of fifth grade. And after having attended the same elementary school from first through fourth grade, I ended up starting fifth grade at a new school. And through just the way life circumstances unrolled, I ended up going to 3 different elementary schools before Christmas break that year.
Wow.
And so,
Wow.
yeah, it had already been a big change. And then to have that many changes right back to back, it just left me, I didn't have any friends by the time I landed at that third school. I felt like I didn't have any friends, and I was very lonely and scared, and just a lot so anyways, because of that, food and television became my companions, my friends, and my comforters.
I think a lot
And
of people can relate to that, Janice. A lot of people, have turned to things like that just for a distraction to the pain of life. So,
well, and they have very powerful chemical responses in our system. Our body responds to that. And my body, it responded really well. And it responded really quickly by gaining weight. And
Mhm.
this was in the late 1970s, before the overweight and obesity epidemic had hit, especially amongst children. And
Okay.
so I stood out. Now, where I was at that point, in today's terms, it would not even have been noticed, but this was back in the late 70s.
Okay.
And that stayed with me all through middle school and all through high school. Like I just wasn't like the other girls. I couldn't wear the size clothes I wanted to wear like the other girls. And even though it stayed with me through high school, I had an activity that I was really involved in, and it was a lot of fun, and it had a lot of movement associated with it. So I ended up having a lot of confidence by the time my senior year came around, and I was just trying things and going and doing, and I wasn't allowing it to hold me back.
Hmm.
And I left high school feeling really good. And
Okay.
then college.
Mhm.
So I was really very blessed. I got to kind of last minute leave Oregon and go to Florida College. And it
Yeah.
was great and it was lots of fun, but it was a last minute decision, and I ended up driving across the country with a friend who was moving from Oregon to Florida to live there.
Okay.
And when you're driving, as you know, right now, all kinds of things can come up. Like yesterday, the tornado came up for you. Well, we got stuck. We got stuck
Yeah.
because of Hurricane Elena. We got delayed in Texas. That caused us to arrive on campus later. So I missed move-in day. I missed all of the social things that happened, the meet and greets that happened to kind of break the ice.
Wow.
And I had never been to a FC camp as a kid, and I just didn't know anybody. There I was, just like in fifth grade, scared, alone, no friends, and that cycle of food being my comforter came back really strong. So my freshman 15 was way more than the freshman 15.
Mhm.
Um,
Oh,
I ended up moving to Florida to actually reside here. I didn't just stay here for school, and I was sharing an apartment with really great girls. But they didn't have the weight issues I did. And I would find myself like going to the grocery store and buying candy and eating it and hiding the wrappers and going because I didn't want them to see.
mhm.
And I didn't like being sneaky. And it just
Mhm.
didn't feel right to me to live that kind of, if I had to sneak around to do it, I don't think I should be doing it. And I
Mhm.
told them, I'm like, okay, I need to give up chocolate because I think my brain responds to chocolate the way a drug addict's brain responds to their drug of choice. And nobody was
Mhm.
talking about food addiction back then, but that's exactly what I told them. And I gave up chocolate. I was probably 21 or 22, and I gave it up for 5 years. I did not have it. And I really was afraid of it because I knew if I go back. But oh, M&Ms came out with blue M&Ms. And M&Ms had been a big part of my childhood, and they didn't have blue when I was a kid, and this nostalgia.
The
And I wanted
celebration of the blue. Welcome, blue. M&M.
M&M. And I wanted one blue M&M.
And that was
That
the
was it.
trigger.
That was the gateway for my
Wow.
brain to just say more, more, more. It's back.
Uh-huh.
And that began the cycle of me trying to take out trigger foods, reintroduce trigger foods, whatever. And it happened multiple times where I would try and take out trigger foods, do fine, and then try and reintroduce them, because by now, surely I've shown I have self-control. And why would I try to reintroduce these things that I know? And that's one of the messages we're told over and over: everything in moderation. And that did not work for me with these things.
Well, that's the confusing thing, is moderation. I mean, it is the key to some things in life. So it's like the key to sleep. Get the right amount of sleep, have the right amount of play, get the right amount of work, spend in moderation. So when it comes to moderation, it just means the avoiding of excess. So it works in so many things. It just seems like and for some people it works with food. Like do not eat too much honey is what the Proverbs say. Not for everyone. And so that's your message tonight, is that there is a variance in the susceptibility to addiction among us. Like not all of us can handle moderation, So for
Right.
you, that would be like saying moderation in methamphetamines or something, right? I mean, it's like there's so yeah, I don't want to take up your story, but yeah, there's
It's
certain.
true. And so for me, to try and put moderation with those things is a big fat lie for me. It doesn't work for my brain. Same thing with, don't the message of don't deprive yourself, just exercise some self-control. Like, really, I gave up chocolate for 5 years. Surely I showed I had some self-control. But my brain, when those substances get into my brain, all it says is they're back. Let's ask for it, ask for it, ask for it, ask for it. I want it. And all of a sudden the pantry is calling all the time. I end up back in that cycle where I have a continual lust for it.
Well, the thing that's interesting too, Janice, about your story is that you're someone who always displays self-discipline. I mean, you just aced statistics 100%. That wasn't the plan for me to tell the world that, but I'm just saying the kind of, you're getting this degree, a bachelor's degree in your 50s, and like you do all this hard stuff, but a lot of us will have like this one area that is we're just trying to wrangle it. Right. So it really is, you cannot look at a person and say like, oh, I can tell how much self-control you have by what you look like. Yeah. Like when I was running my full marathon in 2012, this variances of the size of bodies, all kinds of people crossing that finish line of all different weights and sizes and everything. You cannot tell by looking at a person how much self-control they have. But in this one area, then that was, you got to know your brain, and that just like really speaks to the value of knowing yourself.
Well, and the truth is that my body responded by gaining weight and gaining it very easy. There's other people who they still deal with that same kind of cycle like I have. Their brain is doing the same thing, but their body doesn't show it on the outside the same way my body did. But they're still in that cycle where their brain is chaos for them. That addiction cycle is there. Oh.
Tell me about when you discovered the answer? Like, how did it come to you? Like,
well, I think I'd like to share another little piece before I get to that, because I think that there's a part of the journey that because I really got to the point of I gave in to giving up. Each time that I would muster up the courage to try, it was the pain of obesity, the pain of being overweight. That's what drove me to try again, to try and remove trigger foods. But I had done enough of that to myself that my body stopped responding. The weight just wouldn't go. It didn't matter how much self-control I tried to have with just some specific trigger foods. The weight was there.
Okay.
And I had been in a period of about 3 years of giving up what I called my 5 C's at the time: cookies, crackers, cakes, candies, and chips. I had been 3 years without any of those. And in that time period, only lost 30 pounds. I mean, that can get discouraging if you're giving that up, hoping that the result I get is that weight loss will happen.
Okay.
But I had no desire to reintroduce them because I had already gone through. I had the story of the M&Ms. I had all of that. I knew what that cycle could be like.
Okay.
I had no desire to bring them back. And then our family got hit with loss, sudden loss. And we're all kind of in this place of sudden loss right now as we're all dealing with COVID. I think all of us are experiencing that right now. And it was December 2016 that we got the diagnosis. My father-in-law, my sweet, sweet father-in-law, got the diagnosis of pancreatic cancer. And that happened December 24th of 2016. And January 24th, 2017, we were having his service, his memorial service. It was fast. It was quick. And we were so blessed to be showered with love from our church family and friends. And one of the ways that we show love to each other is through food. They took care of that basic need for us so that we didn't have to worry about it and think about it. And at that point, I did not have any bandwidth in my brain to try and stay true to any of the things. And I just ate whatever was there. I just ate it, and I ate it, and I ate it. And that started again, another cycle. And I didn't think I would have the ability to try again. I really got to the place that really we can see it in 1 Corinthians 15:32, where discouragement was so in, and I was that why bother attitude. And it was just, all right, well, let us eat and drink, for tomorrow we die. Like, I just resigned myself that overcoming this was impossible, and I was just going to remain heavy, and I was just going to be the best version of me as heavy me.
Okay.
So then in September of 2017, so just a few months later, a video popped into my Facebook feed. And it was a lady who had she has her PhD in cognitive neuroscience, and she was talking about the science behind the addictive nature of flour and sugar and how they hijack our brain. And I'm listening to this video, and she's telling my story about what I shared with my friends about chocolate, how my brain wants chocolate. I'm like, yep, that's the truth. She's describing it exactly right. That's it. And it was scary to try again. I wasn't sure. I didn't want anybody to know I was going to try again. I was going to try and hide that I was trying again because too many people had watched me try and fail.
Okay.
But I knew she was right. And so I knew I had to try again. And so the verse I held on to when I started is Matthew 5:37. Let your yes be yes and your no be no. I no longer wanted to live a life where my intention was yes and my behavior was no, because it is so painful to not have integrity when that's how you're living.
So you go cold turkey, is this right?
Do you
know the date? Like, do you have like a do you?
September 22nd of 2017. When I watched that video, I said, okay, she's right, done. No more. I won't have it. I don't know what her plan is. I hadn't gotten the book yet. I hadn't done anything. I just said, fine. Part of it is no flour, no sugar. And the other is you eat 3 meals a day only and you don't snack. I'm like, fine, I can do that. I don't need to have anything else. I can do at least that. So that's what I count as my day one. I don't even know what today is. It's over 3 years. So
yeah. That is amazing. And it really speaks to sometimes cold turkey is the most viable option around things that anything that we're like level 10 addicted to, and even beyond food, like anything that we're level 10 addicted to, why should we make it harder than it needs to be? Sometimes things are harder to manage than they are to cold turkey. And so you might think about like, what's the challenge in your life? Is there an area that you could cold turkey something? And really, maybe that's what Jesus is talking about when he says, when we're tempted, that it's better just like remove your eye if that's what it takes if you're addicted to lust, and that it's not a literal thing necessarily, but it means that no matter how intense the sacrifice, no matter how painful the loss, if it saves your life, it's worth it. And that could be on a spiritual level. And then sometimes, with this kind of thing, who knows, you might have saved your life, or
or a limb. If I'd have continued eating that way, who knows? Maybe I would have had to give up a toe or something along the way. And instead, I've given up cookies now, and so I can have my toes later. I don't know. Who knows? But what I've been asked to cast aside really is not. It sounded huge at the beginning. It sounds harder to do than actually doing it. And so, that was the beginning of my recovery, and I am 3 years into my recovery of
You're
my
a
addiction.
girl now, Janice. I mean, isn't it interesting how we think sugar is the thing that's making us happy? We think it's the M&Ms that are making us happy, and because we're tricked into that, and it's like, oh, I can be just as happy, in fact, more happy than what I was, being led to believe by.
Absolute truth. Oh, think that food marketers. I just finished a marketing class on that degree I'm working on, and marketing is anyway. Those food marketers, their job is to get you to come buy their product. They want you to be a lifelong customer of their product, and they have scientists that create those foods with the bliss point, the chemical bliss point in your brain is how they design their products so that you'll keep coming back.
So does it get easier? I mean, or do you still fight your brain? Like, is your brain going, I want that, I want that, I want that, give me that, give me that? I mean, how does that work?
No, that silence came actually very quickly because when I did take them out and I did it, and I held on, let your yes be yes and let your no be no. I did not give myself, I started September and my birthday's in November and Thanksgiving and the holidays, like it was right before the holidays. And I didn't give in any of those and say, well, this is a special occasion. A cheat day for me is just going to be another spiral. So those things are just gone. They're removed. It would be like saying I had an allergy to peanuts and saying, oh, but it's this special peanut butter cookie that was made specially for me. I'm going to have a special celebration. That's going to make me sick if I have a peanut allergy. And so I just treat my brain that I have allergic reactions in my brain. I just don't think of them. They're not even food to me anymore. They're just pain.
Yeah, I mean, one slogan you have is like, not my food, right? That's just it's not my food. It might be your food. And the other thing is that I appreciate about your thing is, like, if you and I go to lunch, you'll have nothing to say about my plate. Like, it's every man, your eyes are on your own plate. Right? I mean, I really appreciate that too, that it's not about a shaming thing or anything like that. It's just kind of like the way it is. It's kind of like the facts. That's what I gather from you as I watch you live life and, manage food.
Yeah. Thank you. I appreciate that. And actually judgment can come the other way where people are like, oh, are you still doing that? Are you ever going to have fun again? And people that are well-meaning, I can't even have cake that's made out of zucchini with sugar substitute stuff. Like all that does to my brain is say cake is back on the menu. Like I can't even have these substitutes that are made in a healthy version.
Yeah.
And I just have to say no because I can't bring that back.
Yeah.
And so while I am 3 years into my recovery, I really am highly aware that I'm only 3 years into my recovery.
Yeah.
And the difference this time, though, is this is the first time I've removed both substances completely and actually allowed my brain to heal. This is the first time where all that chatter in my brain of, well, if I do this, then I'll have to exercise here to burn that off. Or if I had that earlier, and so I'll have to, all of that noise is gone. And if you've ever been in a room where you're trying to think and concentrate and you don't know how hard you're fighting to concentrate until the air conditioner turns off and that low grinding noise goes away and you're finally like, oh, I can think now. Like that noise was turned off and it's such a relief.
Okay.
So I think that 1 Corinthians 10:23 really sums it up for me, where it says, all things are lawful, but not all things are profitable. That's where I am. I can't say that flour and sugar are not lawful, but for me and how my brain works, they are not profitable at all.
Right. So I was going to ask you, Janice, if prayer has, what place did prayer have in this victory? What answers to prayer have you witnessed in the course of your journey?
Yeah, this really became very much not a physical journey. It started, there was a lot of processes, physical processes in place at the beginning to set up the new habits, because changing habits is hard. But it really became very much a spiritual journey, and there was a lot of prayer involved, and a lot of having other women pray with me, that I would continue to be able to, because when look at our food landscape. Our food landscape, flour and sugar everywhere. I mean, do you remember back when we were kids? Like, you could go to the gas station and you would buy gas, and if you were lucky, they had a vending machine with a cold drink, and maybe one of those things where you could turn the crank bar to get just a little handful of something for your quarter. Now it's a mini mart that happens to serve gas. It's a snack utopia that serves gasoline. Like, it's just so different. Like, you really are swimming upstream when you make this kind of change, but it is so good. It is so good.
I agree. And I have loved watching. I mean, you've always been very close with God, but you're somebody, if I'm in grief, I've been in a closet before and you're praying over me. When I'm in grief, I turn to you. So I'm sure that your relationship with God must have been affected, like the closeness that you grew to God during this struggle.
I think James chapter 1, verses 2-4 really states it so well.
Okay.
Consider it pure joy, my brothers, whenever you face trials of many kinds, because you know that the testing of your faith produces perseverance. Perseverance must finish its work, so that you may be mature and complete, not lacking anything. I don't know about you, but I want to be mature and complete and not lacking in anything. And I can't be anything but grateful that it was this kind, tender food. It wasn't something that caused all kinds of chaos. There's so many addictions that can really, if I had to learn this lesson this way, if I had to go through the pain of this 40-year battle, this was my 50th birthday present to myself to start this program. That's a 40-year battle.
Yeah.
If I can look back now and just say, what a kind, gentle way for me to have to learn that lesson.
Thank you for your example. I think this is something that will benefit a lot of people. And it kind of reminds me of that movie, It's a Wonderful Life. Like, you never know the ripple effects of your good influence, but if the ripple effects on the rest of the world from listening to you tonight are anything like the ripple effects that you've made in my life, there's a lot of people that are going to benefit from your courage tonight and your example. And I just want to thank you for being vulnerable and be willing to talk about really what's probably been one of the most painful aspects of your life, and just so that you can help other women to overcome in all the ways. So thank you. Anything else, Janice, before I close this down?
I'm just going to say, if anybody is interested, the book I ended up reading is called Bright Line Eating, and it does hit food addiction and the addictive nature of flour and sugar. And if anybody wants to talk with me about this, if they, I feel free to reach out to Older Women Likewise, and they'll connect you with me, because I want to pass along, because this freedom is something that I didn't think I would ever know, not in this life.
Beautiful job tonight, Janice. Thank you.
Thank you for
if you guys want to hear me and Janice shoot the breeze, we actually had a podcast we did on Nomads, you and I, called Things That We Love. And so get to know Janice more that way. That'd be fun. And then I guess the other book that I would recommend to our audience tonight is called Atomic Habits by James Clear. In fact, I think I stumbled upon it because the author of Janice's book, one time, she does like vlogs. I think she recommended it. And man, it is the best book on self-control that I have ever read. It just kind of like teaches you to work smarter, not harder, like by setting up your environment in a way that you don't, you can kind of wrangle in all of the behaviors that you're wanting to wrangle in just in your moment by moment life. So I'm going to close tonight with a familiar recommendation. If you're interested in learning more about what God's word says, in contrast to some of what the present day man-made religious doctrines are that have muddied the waters of Christianity, then I'd encourage you to tune into a program that my husband participates in called Answering Religious Error. And it's live on Facebook every Thursday night at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And again, on Friday, that same team of preachers answers all your Bible questions that you send in with a Bible answer. And so that's at noon on Friday, Eastern Standard Time. So they will give you a book, chapter, and verse thrown in for free at no additional charge. So, you know, free on top of free is very, very good price. So good night, guys. Thanks for joining.
Good night.